with this desk, which is definitely a homemade desk. It's never been made in the factory, and you can see that as you are close to it. It's not made with nails. It's all been dovetailed together. This would have been a very important piece of furniture for the family because they needed to have a place for safekeeping of articles and things. This is the writing surface, which lifts, and there is a big storage area here with pigeonholes, which makes it possible for them to sort things out. The upper part has shelves in it that can be used for books or whatever they would choose to use that area for. But this would have been a very important piece of furniture. They didn't have any safe deposit boxes in banks for safekeeping things, and so this would have been very important. Before I leave, I mentioned the fact that as you see the pictures here, Levi on the left and Milton here on the right. The children in between were Levi on the left and Plum on the right. These were sons of Levi and the brothers of Phoebe. On the table below the picture is a soup tureen. They try to copy things like that today, but that's an original one, and it has a big ladle in it, make it possible to serve a large number of persons from that particular one. The vases on the sides were hand-blown, and they date back to about 1874. In this cabinet here are dishes that you see the blue and white ones. They were made in Staffordshire, England in 1880 by the W.H. Grindley Company. And this lower section are copper luster pitchers. These are very lovely. These were made in England between 1825 and 1900. They were very difficult to make because I understand that the temperature needs to be exactly right. If it's a little bit too warm or a little bit too cool, it spoils the effect of the finish on the pitchers. These are really very lovely, and all of them are different in a little way. You don't notice it at first. The four pieces over there do have the same design on them. There are four different styles in the copper, and these were given to us in recent times. In fact, just within the last year, it was an acquisition. This chair also, it has been recent. All of the things in the museum, really, in the beginning, were from the Sutliff home. We have added things over the years as people have chosen to give them to us, but they do have to fit into the time period between 1800 and 1900. And this was given to us as a gift also a couple of years ago. This is a rosewood rocker that was made in 1850 in England. The paintings on all of the different paintings that you see on the walls were made by local artists who were living here in Trumbull County. This one here is of the Dana Institute of Music. You notice that on the left is the Sutliff Law Office, which actually is the place where the library was built. Over on this corner here, you see the architect's picture of the library as it was to be, and above it was the law office of Milton Sutliff. This painting here was done by Carl Schmidt, and the Dana School of Music was a very important school. It was founded here in Warren in 1869. It was here for over 80 years, and they came from all over the world, actually, to study in this school. Due to a change in the laws in Ohio in 1940s, it was necessary for the school to, they said, to offer subjects other than just music, which is what the school had been limited to. And so in order to accomplish that, they became a part of, they affiliated with what was then Youngstown College. This was in the mid-1940s. The faculty from here went down and continued to teach, and it is still today the Dana School of Music at the University in Youngstown. The statues, one is of Dante, and one is of Virgil, and these, of course, were very nice for decorations and something that would be appropriate for the Sutliff home. All of the furniture is Victorian furniture, and except for this one here, these were things that were from the Sutliff home. Here you see a picture of Mary. This was an older sister of Phoebe's, and unfortunately, she died when she was only 11 years old. And of course, people wonder, why did she die so young? But she was a victim of diphtheria. That was a very common ailment in those days, and many people did suffer that disease. If they were able to get the high fever broken, a person might live, but that was difficult to do, and she did not live but 3 or 4 days after she came down with that disease. But in her very short period of life, she did several rather interesting things, and one was to make this quilt that you see below her. Her mother wrote on one of the squares in a block that Mary did this when she was 6 and 7 years old, and that she finished it on the day that Abraham Lincoln, the first Republican president, was inaugurated in March of 1861. She got all of that onto a little square in the block. And Mary died in 1864. She would have been, I believe, another person like her sister Phoebe. She certainly had all the things that made one believe that she was highly going to be a very good student, and it would have been someone to have taken a good chance of looking at later on. But this was an accomplishment, I would say, for one so young. Today, we don't teach little girls to do things like that, but in those days, they did try to help their little girls to teach them how to do needlework. Of course, you had to have some talent along with it, but they did have, the little girls were taught to do what they could with the sewing because they were responsible for their homes. Usually they married rather young, and anything that they were going to have in their home was something that they would have to make. So this was something that not unusual that they taught them. Here we have a beautiful display of cut glass. This is Libby glass and is really very, very beautiful. We have recently received this as a gift also, and we're very happy to have this. It's something that is a pleasure and a joy to look at. You'll see a punch bowl around here that belongs with the group too, just a little while as we move around the room. There are pieces of silverware here that most of them are spoons. It used to be that you would give a spoon to someone when they were born for different kinds of gifts. Many of these are spoons that were wedding presents when Phoebe and Levi were married in 1840, and they are so engraved with her initials and with the date. One of them is a spoon that was given to Phoebe when she was born in 1859. The spoons are made from coins. They're coin silver, and this was possible to do that up until about 1850. There was no nothing said about not being able to melt down the silver, and so the silversmiths, when they came into the Western Reserve, were not aware of the fact that it was going to be very difficult for them to get silver to make their nice pieces of spoons and silver tea services and things of that sort. And so they soon learned that they could use the silver pieces that were used for money and were used by those who were traveling the rivers, the peddlers, and they would, if they took a 25-cent piece, for instance, into a silversmith to have it cut, they wanted to have 4 pieces out of it. The silversmith would, with his fine-tooth saw, would cut 5 pieces, and he would save 1 piece for himself and give the 4 pieces back to the owner. And those 4 pieces could take on any kind of price. Instead of being 25 cents, maybe each one of those 4 pieces could be 25 cents a piece, and that would make that original 25-cent piece a very valuable piece. But this is the way the silversmiths were able to get silver that they could use to make the lovely coffee pots and the tea services and the spoons and so forth. These were made from coin silver in that same way. At 1850, that all had to stop. This is something that I'm sure you recognize as being a conch shell. This is not the original one. The original one was a little larger than this, I've been told. It was owned by the parents of the gentleman in the family. Samuel and Ruth Granger Sutliff were the ones who first had this conch shell, came from the West Indies. And it was used as a horn. And it could be heard for a mile, which was good because the farms were far apart. And this was being used for emergencies, and there could be all kinds of emergencies, of course. And as an example, their little boy, Calvin, was only 3 years old, and he was being chased by a bear. And I'm sure that Calvin thought that was quite an emergency, and fortunately his mother saw what was happening. And she grabbed the horn and was able to get the men from the fields with their guns. They always had their guns with them, of course. And they were able to get that bear just in time because Calvin had already scrambled up on top of the cabin, and the men were able to get the bear, who was right behind Calvin. This was used, for instance, to, what I mentioned a while ago about the having a guard when there were meetings being held with the abolitionists. This was used with signals to be able to tell them that they needed to break the meeting up. Any kind of an emergency, sickness, fires, animals, all kinds of things were important. And if they would blow this, people would know that there was something that was needing their attention, and they would come to help. You see here an interesting item. This was on a day when you could take a youngster out for a walk in a baby carriage. That would be fine to do. But when there was snow on the ground and it was packed, that was another problem, because of course the baby carriage wasn't a very good idea. You could put them in a sleigh like this and push them over the snow, and the bells would jingle, and that would entertain the baby while they was having a walk. I'm sure he would enjoy it. This is horsehair trim that you see here. The cover that is in the sleigh is a beautiful example of the kind of weaving that was done. You can see from the inscription there that it was made in 1838, and it is in perfect condition. It's full size, and it's reversible. Where it's blue on one side, it's white on the other. In other words, where the flowers and the birds are blue, they're white on the other side, and where the background is white here, the background is blue on the other side. And the inscription is also in the on the opposite corner, in the opposite colors as well. Now I might mention the paintings that you see here. This is a map that has created a great deal of interest over the years. It shows what Warren was like in 1870. And of course that's quite different from Warren today. People like to try to see if they can find where they are, but of course the area for Warren was very, very much smaller than where most of the people were trying to find themselves. The river here is the Mahoning, and this area in here is the Perkins farmland. The courthouse has always been in this one square right here. We've had 3, but this has always been the area where the courthouse would be. When Quinby first came to Warren, the area in 1799, or actually he came in a couple of years earlier than that, and selected the land that he wanted, and then he gave Warren over 444 acres of land to be used as a place for courthouse to be, and that is where it has always been. The first courthouse was built. I should also mention the fact that the Western Reserve was an area that extended from the Pennsylvania border out 120 miles west out to where Sandusky is today, and it went south to the 41st latitude. There was a large area of land. There was 5,700 square miles in that, and this was something that was called the Connecticut Western Reserve because Connecticut had been along with a number of the other colonies along the coast, it had been chartered to them by the kings in the very early 1600s. The other colonies had given up their hold on it because they felt that, after all, the mountains were in the way, and they had enough to do over on that side, and this was just wilderness in to the west, and so forget it. But Connecticut did not do that. They were very stubborn. They held on to the land. Eventually, they finally gave up the claim on it. Actually, their charter had said sea to sea. They didn't quite know where the Pacific Ocean was, apparently. At any rate, Connecticut did give up, except they said, we want to reserve a portion. That's where the word reserve comes from. It was west, so it was west, and Connecticut was the one that was owning it. And so it was called the Connecticut Western Reserve. Over the years, the government had tried to get them to release their hold on it. Finally, they did set off a large area of land out around Huron, near the Sandusky part, and this was what they called the Firelands. And this got that name because the state had thought they would be able to help their people who had been burned out so badly in the Revolutionary War, and they would give them this land free if they would just go and settle there. Well, there were quite a few who took them up on it, but actually they didn't have to go to the land if they didn't want to, and a lot of people didn't want to. And so they didn't succeed in getting the land settled as they had hoped they would be able to do. Therefore, eventually, it just kept on being unsuccessful. In 1795, they decided that they would offer the land for sale. And there was a group of men that eventually was called the Connecticut Land Company. And these men, there were about 57 of them originally, and 48 actually purchased land. They were told that this whole area of land that I mentioned, a big-sized piece of land, could not be sold for less than $1 million. And so, actually, finally, it was these men in the Connecticut Land Company, some of them spending different amounts of money according to what they felt they could afford, and they purchased the land for $1,200,000. It was to be about 50 cents an acre. That's a good price for an acre of land, don't you think? They knew that, of course, it probably would increase in value over the time. In 1800, then, this was in 1795 when this took place, and then in 1800, Governor St. Clair, who was the one in charge of the whole Northwest Territory, decided that the Western Reserve should be called Trumbull County. And he was selected the name Trumbull as an honor to the governor of Connecticut, who was Jonathan Trumbull. And Warren was selected to be the capital of this Western Reserve. It was quite an honor for the little village of Warren, and it was very much of an outrage to some of the other areas around that had hoped for that honor. Warren has been a seat of government ever since 1800. This took place in the early part of 1800. Now, to get back to what I was saying here, the courthouse, first courthouse, was built then in 1815. The second courthouse was built, and this is a picture of it here, and whether you can see that or not, but this one was the one that burned in 1895. And of course, that was a very important date to remember, because the new courthouse that we have today was built in 1895. And I will show you some things that I have here that came from remnants of the bell and of the wood in the building itself when we get around to that area. The map here shows the courthouse in this position. Way out here is where the fairgrounds is located. That's where the fairgrounds, that's now where the high school still is. And then also in this, up in this area, out away from the town, was Oakwood Cemetery. you would, if you were able to see, you could see the covered bridges that are here. And this is the Mahoning Avenue. This was the turnpike, a very important road that connected the Lake Erie with the Ohio River. And this, of course, today is still, it's Route 45, but is Mahoning Avenue as well. And our library is located right in here. This has been a very interesting map for people to study. And you notice that the streets are not all named by any means the same as they are today. And in fact, they even duplicated several of the streets with 2 or 3 times. You would think that as few as they had, they wouldn't need to have done that, but that was the case. And this is High Street here, which was the farthest street north that actually was settled. We have this over here. All these are unmarked, unnamed streets. It was farmland. This is Market Street up as far as where the courthouse is, where it meets with Main Street, and then it became Water Street as it moved along here. Then the next street down was South Street, and that, when it meets up with this Water Street, it became Liberty Street. It's interesting to see how the names changed. The pictures over here, the upper one was done by John Bell, and that's a picture of the first church of the first Methodist church. And that shows it on the bluff on Franklin Alley. And you notice the boats there on the river, and there is a covered bridge back in the back part. I placed this picture here because that is the same bridge down here that this artist chose to focus on as the bridge up there in that other picture. This one was done by Amelia Gunnelfinger around in the middle 1820s. This picture here of the church was done in the 1860s. This is a marble mantle here, and the dogs that you see on it are Staffordshire dogs. They were made in Staffordshire, England, around the 1870s. They were very popular as a decorating thing, and they're still very popular today to be collected if people can find them. The clock was made in France in 1812. There were 3 of them that came to this country in 1863. A jeweler here in Warren brought the 3 of them over, and this particular clock was in the home of a gentleman here in Warren, and he prized it very highly. When he died several years ago, he willed it to the museum for safekeeping. It is marble, and it's an 8-day clock. It's very ornate, and I don't have it running, but it would run if I were to have it fixed so that it could. This is a Franklin stove that it was very successful building from Ben Franklin. He was quite a gentleman, and this was one of his very successful things that he invented. This is a hopper for the coal or wood that you would use in the fireplace. The chair that you see here is somewhat different from the other chairs in the room. You can probably tell what the difference is rather quickly. It's low, but the most important difference is the fact that it doesn't have arms. They're very modified arms. If you'll recall, the ladies in the 1860s and 1850s wore big hoop skirts like I'm wearing. If you try to sit in a chair like these other chairs in the room with arms, that's a real problem, because that hoop just comes right back up and hits you in the face. And ladies are never supposed to be in that kind of situation. They were to be poised and dignified at all times. She could sit in a chair like this without any difficulty and arrange her skirts, and so it is called a lady's chair. On the wall are some important things to point out to you. That painting over there is one that I think is absolutely beautiful. It is done in silk thread on silk material. It was done in 1810, and it was done not by a lady with lots of experience and age, but by an 11-year-old girl. That is a very amazing thing. It's the little lambs are all done in French knots, and you know, making French knots with real floss is a rather interesting thing to try to do, and it's difficult. Those were done with silk thread, and they're perfectly accomplished, and it is a beautiful piece of work. Sarah Dana is the one who did it, and Sarah, the Dana family record right here shows Sarah as one of the children that was born, and actually she was the third Sarah. They had tried to have a little girl named Sarah apparently, and the third one finally lived. The others had died very young. It was this record. It was something, the type of thing that was very popularly done in the 19th century and actually in the early part of the 20th century. It was done by the girls in the family usually, but it was definitely a record, a genealogy type of thing that showed the births and deaths of the members of the family. And this one particular here shows also the marriages as well. This was in the DAR Museum in Washington several years ago for 6 months. They heard that we had this on display here and asked if they might use it. I sent it down to them, and they were very pleased with it. It is a lovely piece of work. It was one of 131 that they chose to show in their exhibit for 6 months. And it has 7 different kinds of stitches in it, which those who are interested and know about embroidery are very anxious to look at, and they like to study it. This, of course, is Phoebe that I've talked about. When she was such a tremendous person, and her idea in having the museum was that it would be a place where people could come and see close, firsthand, things that were used a long time ago, and today, of course, are not any longer popular and being used. This was a part of her plan in having the museum established. This is the punch bowl that I mentioned a few minutes ago. The vases are Bristol glass, and they are matching. It's a matching pair, and they're very lovely. Around the room are a number of little chairs and various little things that were for the children in the family. I mentioned Sarah Dana as being the one who had done this painting. This is a picture of her husband. She came in 1816 from Vermont. This is where the Dana family was originally. And she married Dr. John Harmon, who was one of the early doctors here in town. And then in 1876, by this time she had died, but her son, Dr. Julian, tore down the little house that had been the office as well as their home, and built a nice new home. As a memorial to his mother, he had the beautiful stained glass window made that is on the Mahoning side of the library building as of now. But in 1876, it was put into this lovely new home that Dr. Julian Harmon built. And as I said, it was a memorial to his mother. It's a huge-sized window, and shows his mother sitting with her spinning wheel and their dog at the side. And it is lighted with the sun in the daytime. It is gorgeous, and at night there's a light so that it shows up in a different manner. In the 1920s, the home was to be torn down to build the YMCA. Like I said, they just tore things down regardless. They didn't bother about saving the architecture that was something that couldn't be replaced. So the YMCA went up in place of the Harmon home, and fortunately, Dr. Julian's daughter Olive had the window saved, and she gave it to the library, and they put it in the side window of the library over on High Street. But it was right up against the stone building, and so you couldn't enjoy the beauty of the window at all at that point in time. When this building was created then in 1971, it was given a place where people can enjoy it.